Good morning everyone and welcome to the Griffith Business School Alumni Webinar Series. My name is Karen Schmidt and this is part one of a three-part series on maximising your development opportunities. You're probably somebody who's graduated from Griffith and are now contemplating going back and doing a graduate program, or perhaps you're going to do a program via your employer. Times have changed since you were last at university. Your life has probably changed. And I want to make sure that you're going to get the maximum out of that development opportunity. What I find is that a lot of people go into enrolling in a graduate program or doing a major program with their employer without having really thought through how they're going to make this work. So in this webinar series, I want to look at the before, the during and the after the program to make sure you maximise your opportunities. So what we're going to do today is start with looking at what you can do before you start a program. Now I know for me that I went to university as a mature age student. So I was already working full-time before I signed up to go to university part-time. And I know that there were a number of things that I wish I had done before I started that program so that I could reduce my stress levels and maximise what I got out of the program. I learned a lot since then and I want to make sure I can share some of those things with you. So let's have a look at some of the key things that you can do before you start in a program to make sure you get the most out of it. The first thing I want to look at is the why. Why are you doing this program? Are you doing it because you want to do it or because it was somebody else's idea? I have to tell you that if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you will find it hard going. If you're doing it because it's expected by everybody else but you don't think you're ready, chances are your motivation is going to flag and maybe you won't even make it to the end. I think you need to look really carefully at your why, because if you have a strong enough motivation, you're going to find it far easier to keep going with the program. I know when I did my degree that I was highly motivated to the point where I'd actually turn up to class even if I was sick because my why was strong enough. If you're sitting there right now thinking, yeah, I've been asked to do this program, but I'm not really sure why I'm doing it, then you really need to sit back and ask that question of yourself. The why is also about what are the goals that you're going to get out of it. So sit down and think about how is this program going to help you either in your career or personally? And have those goals set in place, because as you'll see in the rest of this webinar series, it's really important to go back and revisit those goals on a regular basis. And I think they perform part of that why you're doing it. If you want a little bit more motivation about understanding whys, I highly recommend that you watch a TED Talk by Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K, and he goes to the heart of why both organisations and individuals who are clear on their why are far more successful. It's just an 18-minute talk and you'll find that it'll give you some really good insights into the importance of understanding your own why. So if you figured out why you're doing this and you know that it's for the right reasons, it's for you rather than because other people want you to do it, then we can move on to the next step. And that is the where. Where are you going to find the time to do this? Now, I know lots of different people are watching this webinar. And you may well be young and single with no kids, but working full-time. You might be married with children. You might be quite a mature person who has elderly parents to care for. You could be involved in all sorts of things in your life. Where are you going to find the time to do this program? You need to think about this before you start, particularly if you're going to outlay money to do this or make a commitment to somebody. There's nothing worse than getting started and then discovering that you just don't have the time management skills to make this work. Now, where are you going to fit it in, where are you going to find the time could be about what time of day is best for you. Are you a morning person? Do you work better at night? How are you going to fit your study in around that? Particularly if you're doing something that's self-paced, perhaps by watching webinars or going online. Perhaps you have a choice of when you can attend those classes at university. Think carefully about what's going to fit in with your own personal body rhythms as well as your lifestyle. Now, I know when I was studying that I needed to make sure that I had time in my schedule, and so I really sat down and took a hard look at how I was going to fit that into my life and make sure that my time management skills weren't going to get me in trouble. Particularly when at one point I had 17 assignments that all had to be done by the end of a semester. Your time management is a particularly important skill to get right. Now, another aspect of where that you can consider is even the physical study space. Where in your house are you going to do this? Having a set up study space that encourages you, that is suitable to the task, that has minimal distractions, is vitally important. If you don't have something at home, you might want to find a space elsewhere. Now, I know some people love going to a cafe and doing things, but you've got to ask yourself, how distracted am I going to get going there? Do you have a public library available? Could you come back to the university campus and do it? These are really basic, practical things I'm talking about. But let me tell you, in my experience of working with people, that they can be what gets you in trouble. The next is the how. How are you going to actually make this work for you in your life? And make sure that you have in place all of those mechanisms to overcome things like the barriers that are going to be put in your place. So the how is also about how are you going to implement some of the ideas that you're learning along the way. Then we go into the who. Who is going to support you? Does your leader know that you're doing this program? Does your HR department know? Do they have any mechanisms in place that can help you, such as study leave? What about people in your personal life? Is there anybody at home that can actually be your support mechanism to encourage you, to motivate you? Equally, do you know anybody else who's doing the same program? Now, what comes to mind for me is people who may have studied accounting, who are going on to do their professional year qualification. Maybe there's some other people that you know who are also doing that same qualification, and perhaps that you can study together. So the support mechanisms can be really important to put in place. So look at the who in your life, what they can do to actually help you with this. And then finally, we look at the what. What barriers are you likely to encounter along the way? And I would have to say the number one barrier that I have seen with people who are trying to study and work is motivation. You start out all enthusiastic about doing this program, but then very quickly over time, you discover that that enthusiasm wanes. So what are those likely barriers going to be? How are you going to stop yourself from getting distracted? How are you going to say no to those social invitations? What about those other commitments that you're involved in? Do you need to pare those back a little bit? So it might be that team that you train with every week for sport. Is that going to fit into your life? Think about what the barriers are that not only you encounter, but maybe ask around other people that you know. What barriers have they encountered? So they can maybe give you some tips and some pointers on what are the things that you need to watch out for. Because you want to start this process knowing that it's going to end well. And knowing that you're going to achieve what it was you set out to achieve. Because there's no worse feeling than starting something and not finishing it. I want to make sure that you start what you finish. So to have a bit of a summary of what we've covered off this morning, we've looked at the why, the where, the how, the who, and the what of preparing before your program starts. I think you should answer all these questions before you ever get into a program. Now, let's see if we've got any questions out there from anybody who's been listening in on things that we can do with this information. So here's a look at our first one. What are my top tips for good time management? Okay, as well as looking at what's the best time of day for you to do your study, it's also about making sure that you take regular breaks. The idea that you might study for 45 minutes and then take a 15-minute break is a really good one. It's also about making sure with those good time management tips that if you're coming straight from work to class, that you leave yourself a buffer, that you can actually decompress from one activity to the next. And there's actually a great concept that I've heard out there from Dr. Adam Fraser. He's written a book called The Third Space. And it's about how do you move from I'm at work to going home, or I'm at work to going to study, to actually clear your mind, because I think it's often our mind that's full of ideas that stops us from effectively studying. So thanks for the question. That was a really good one. Here we've got another one, this one time from Stacey. How do you approach a manager about doing professional development? Great question. I think you need to be able to answer another question. You may have heard of it before. It's called, what's in it for me? We sometimes call it WIIFM, everyone's favourite radio station. You need to go to your manager and talk to them about how they're going to benefit from you doing this study program. If you go in and just talk about all the things you're going to get out of it personally, that may not be enough to convince them. You need to think about the things that they're going to be concerned about. Will this impact on your work? Will you still be able to do overtime? Are you learning any skills that are actually going to be useful to you in your job? Of course, it's a much harder sell if you're trying to study something that has nothing to do with your current role. Now, if that's your case, and you do have plans to move elsewhere in your organisation, at least be upfront and honest about them. If you work for a good company, they're going to understand, and if your program's 2, 3, 4 years long, they're still going to have you working there for that period of time, knowing that at the end you might want to move on to other things. I think honesty is always the best policy, and I would rather do that than sneak around studying something without involving my manager. So, a couple of great questions that we've had there from people. We're going to be back next week, where we're going to be looking at what do you do during the program. So we've got you all prepared, but once the program's actually started, there are a few other tips that I can give you around how you can make sure you keep that motivation up and maximise your learning so that you're getting the best possible development opportunity from whatever type of program you do. I've been Karen Schmidt from Let's Grow on behalf of the Griffith Business School Alumni Network, and I look forward to having you with me next week when we go into part 2 of our webinar series.